And welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us here virtually at HubSpot this evening. Let's kick it off with our topic, which is moving from sales rep to sales manager and what a 2-year roadmap looks like for that transition. So about 45% of our reps here in HubSpot would like to make that transition from sales rep to sales manager. And if that's representative of the wider community in sales and of you who are joining us today for this call, it is something that many of you are going to be doing over the next few years, and something I would like to share a few actionable insights and tips on that you can take to achieve your goal. Why am I giving the presentation this afternoon? Well, I started here at HubSpot about 8 years ago, and I was a sales rep. I made that transition into sales manager here at HubSpot. I was working on the direct UKI team and then moved into a customer sales role before making the transition into a director role more recently. So I've used many of these best practices. I've received a lot of this guidance from mentors over the years, and I've used some of the tips that I'm going to share within the preparing for the interview process as well. So hopefully they'll be helpful to you in your roles. There's 2 types of career conversations that I have regularly with reps and managers on my team. And the first is career development, so that in-role development. How can you excel at the job that you're currently in? And the second is career progression, which is where we're going to focus today. So moving to a more senior position within your organization, in this case, sales manager. So if somebody comes to me and says, I would like to be a sales manager, that's my goal, my first question tends to be why? Why do they want this role? And very few people have actually had a really good answer to this in our first conversation. So my first tip for you would be not to follow someone else's career path, and don't move into sales management because it feels like that logical next step. Do you know that this role is going to energize you? How are you going to add value to a team? How are you going to impact the company? Is this really the move for you? When you find out that it is the role you want to be in, spend a little bit more time about understanding what precisely is that day-to-day job. So a regular conversation or a regular topic that comes up when somebody makes that move from sales rep to sales manager is that I didn't realize what a sales manager really did outside of one-to-ones, team meetings and coaching. You don't want to be in that position. So spend time shadowing sales managers, learning the day-to-day, and ensure that this is definitely that role for you. When you have made that decision, when is the timing to make that leap? When is the right time to make that transition? So the 2-year time frame I use today is just a guidance. There are 2 timelines for consideration really for anyone making this move. There's the right time for you, and there's the right time for your organization. So speak to your manager or your director and be realistic about the timeframes that you're setting. Set both short and long-term goals and document them in a professional development plan, which you share with your manager. There's one given before you start this journey. You should be excelling in your current position before you start looking at career progression. So make sure that you are invaluable on your team, demonstrate mastery, excel as a sales rep, and that's going to earn you that right for others to invest in your career progression. Also, if you're managing your time really efficiently and effectively in your current role, it's going to give you time that you can invest in this journey from sales rep to sales manager. So next, if we're looking at 2021 as the time of ensuring you're excelling in your goal, you want to set that shorter term goal, in this case, a midterm goal of becoming a team lead, and then that longer term goal, the 2-year plan to move into sales management. But between each of these stages, sales rep, team lead, and team lead to sales manager, you're going to find that there are numerous competencies and skills that you need to learn to excel in these roles. And you own this path, you own the development of these competencies that you require to move from stage to stage. So I'd like to walk through competency mapping with you. This for me is probably the most undervalued and overlooked stages in professional development and in looking towards career progression into a management role. And it's where you can take the most actionable steps. So for every role in our organization here at HubSpot, we actually publish the competencies on our internal wiki page. So it's very clear what competencies are required for a sales manager role. Some of them overlap with being a sales rep, and some of them are very, very different. The great thing about competencies is that they can be learned and they can be coached. So some of the things that we look to hire for in our sales managers are people who hire top talent. people who foster inclusivity, communicate effectively, people who coach effectively, build effective teams, who have an analytical mindset, who drive revenue, and they're just some of the competencies that we're looking for. So if you're an aspiring sales manager, the goal should be to become skilled across each of the sales manager competencies within your organization and focus then on consistent and effective application of those competencies. So step one, identify the competencies for the role you're applying for. And as mentioned, we share them publicly in HubSpot, but if your company doesn't publicize them, you might need to be more proactive and reach out to your leadership to ask them what the competencies are. When you know the competencies, add them to your PDP. Map your competencies. So once you have them within your PDP, you may want to invite feedback from your peers, from your manager, and people that you work with cross-functionally, and score yourself personally for each competency, and then start to discuss that with your manager or your mentor. Once you've got a very clear list of competencies, you can see where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. You'll be able to identify where there are gaps and where your strengths are, and there are opportunities, obviously, to double down on those strengths. So you'll set clear objectives on which competencies you want to progress immediately, set a time frame, set a goal and an action plan to gain more experience and coaching in these areas. So let me walk through an example of that. Hires top talent is an example here in HubSpot of something we like to see within our sales managers. If we're thinking of hiring top talent, it's not something that you get a lot of exposure as a rep. So maybe starting with, how do I identify great candidates? Can you go out there and prospect some great candidates and refer them into your organization through your recruiting team? Can you shadow some of the interviews with your sales managers and dissect and learn from your sales managers? And can you then perhaps actually take some of those interviews and run them yourself? Again, that's something that we sometimes do here in HubSpot, but again, that depends on your organization. If you think of communication or presentation skills, how can you develop those? Well, watch the masters at work, be that in your organization or in TED Talks. Really looking at clues of the craft as such, and practice presenting, and look for opportunities then to put yourself forward within project groups, within your team meetings, and again, asking your manager if there are opportunities to present internally or externally. You need to put yourself into that zone of kind of being uncomfortable so that you can grow and build that muscle. This is going to help you to bridge your gaps, but you equally don't want to forget about doubling down on those strengths. So ensure that the people around you can see the competencies that you really excel at, and communicate the impact that you're having in a humble way, of course, but it's the people around you who promote you, and it's really important to remember that. If we think about the team lead program, I think about getting in the driver's seat. Show your team, your manager, your organization that you have the skills and the competencies for this role. So we have an official team lead program here at HubSpot, which we're really proud of. But if you don't have an official team lead program, speak to your manager, ask them about how you could act in a team lead position potentially to support the team and the manager. Be seen as an official, as a team lead, even if it's not in an official capacity. So demonstrate excellence, be the person that people come to if they're looking for coaching, if they're looking for help. Contribute to team meetings, invite contribution and collaboration from others. Be a person that people feel safe and confident bringing challenges to and going to for coaching, and lead by example. Supporting your manager in their day-to-day is another area that will really help you here and will allow you to practice and develop your skills and develop those competencies. And learning to coach. Coaching is, of course, one of the most important skills that a manager can embody. So if you think about the correlation between coaching and the impact of a team and impact on quota, they say that if quoting is exceeding expectations, that about 95% of your team will meet quota. Again, it's really important from an impact perspective. So have a coaching framework. For example, we use the GROW model or the LEADS model here very regularly, and learn how to build trust in that coaching environment. Learn how to lead inclusive team meetings, which can add value to your team. And perhaps you might offer to lead forecasting for the team, another really high value task, which you can practice as a rep before ever making that move into a sales manager role. Projects and initiatives are another great way that you can have a positive impact on your team. Thinking about ways to demonstrate your leadership skills within a group? Can you work cross-functionally on projects? Can you learn to create a vision and get buy-in from different people within the organization? Working on these projects can give you visibility to the wider organization and prove that you can work towards a goal and execute as well. When you're thinking about manager mindset, this is one that doesn't come up as often. But if there's a big change in the organization, maybe you're launching a new product or there's a new process coming out, ask your manager how you can support the communication of this to the team. It will help the adoption of change within the team. And if you are thinking about communicating with your peers, don't be the person who's in the WhatsApp group complaining about the change. Again, be really aware of that personal brand, both with your peers as well as with leadership within the organization, because it's the people around you that will end up promoting you. We think of every journey needing a compass and some direction, and it's no different with your career. So having a mentor to guide you here is so important. Looking for people who are really strong in the areas that you're weak is one way to look for a mentor. You will need a connection. You'll need to trust that mentor and know that they're bought into your success. And sometimes it might mean meeting with a couple of different people before you can identify a mentor that you connect with, and that's fine. It doesn't need to be someone within the sales organization. It might be somebody from a different department, and maybe somebody from a different office, and it may be somebody external to your organization as well. Embrace the coaching that you get from your mentor. As we mentioned, coaching is one of the number one skills you're going to need as a manager. So as you're being coached and embracing the coaching, you're learning in a way how to coach others effectively. And it's the same with feedback. So ask for feedback from as many people across your organization as you can. Peer feedback, upward feedback, 360 feedback. Ask for clarity, ask for actionable next steps. And as you're seeking out that feedback, think about how you would give feedback to others. If we're thinking about investing in your learning, we have a tuition budget here in HubSpot, and we love to see our reps availing of that tuition reimbursement for programs and official learning and official courses outside of HubSpot. But that continuous learning and development can be consuming knowledge from many different sources. It might be internal professional development. It may be through books, through blogs, through podcasts. It may be through other people. The one thing you need to be sure of is that you're being proactive in looking for ways to increase your velocity and depth and range of learning. So the interview's been scheduled. The shirt is ironed. What's next? Think of your interview as an open book exam. So what do I mean by this? Use your competencies as a cheat sheet. Your competencies have already been highlighted. Hopefully your company has shared them with you. As mentioned again, we do share them very clearly here in HubSpot. So if you know the competencies being tested for in an interview, you should spend some time actually documenting those competencies and discussing examples of times that you've demonstrated those competencies in work, through your hobbies, etc. Go back and look for data to support the impact that you had. Ask your manager and peers if they have suggestions of times that you've demonstrated these particular competencies. And if you prepare really thoughtfully on each competency, you should be really prepared to answer any question that comes up in your interview. Equally, it could be years since your last interview. Actors, performers, all rehearse before they go on stage. So this interview is no different. You are under the spotlight, you are under the microscope. Do a mock interview. Ask your manager to suggest someone. I normally suggest someone outside of the very close network of people within the organization. So it might be a leader in another department who I'd recommend doing a mock interview with. But you do need to practice, and it's a really good investment of your time. And finally, how you show up matters. So think about your appearance, your location, your lighting. Are you more comfortable sitting or standing? Some of these really simple things are going to have a big impact. And again, ensure that you're doing your interview from the same spot that you've done kind of your rehearsal or your practice round. So again, you're comfortable and confident going into that process. So if we think of a few takeaways and real next steps for each of you after today's session. You own your own career development. You own your career progression. So everyone else is there to support you, but we want you to be the driving force behind it. Competencies, in my personal opinion, are everything here. They are the heart of this development plan. And aligning with a mentor, somebody who you trust and somebody who believes in you, is really going to help you to work towards that goal of becoming a sales manager. So hopefully the output of this investment of your time is that it is paid off with a job offer. Ideally, if you followed this framework, it should be really obvious that you are the person of choice within the organization for this role, as you've already embodied all of the competencies of a sales manager, and that's been visible to everyone across your organization. Enjoy it then. If you've invested this time into making a move into this role, there are huge rewards. It's a role I personally loved, and I really hope that any of you who take some of the tips from today's conversation and invest it into your progression, that you're going to love that role too. So best of luck with the journey.